Rome, autumn of 1978. The apartment on Via Appia Antica was quiet the way apartments get quiet late at night, when everyone is supposed to be asleep. Hepburn Ferrer was 18 years old. He had been out somewhere ordinary, a friend's place maybe, somewhere that involved laughter and the easy carelessness of being young, and he came home late, moving quietly through the door the way you do when you don't want to wake anyone. The city was doing what Rome does at night, traffic in the distance, a scooter somewhere below, the particular hum of a place that never fully goes to sleep. He went to check on his mother. He didn't always do this. He couldn't explain later why he did it that night. Some instinct, some pull he didn't have a name for. He walked down the hall and pushed open her bedroom door. What he found there stopped him in the doorway. She was in bed. The lamp was on, and on the nightstand beside the lamp, next to a glass of water, there was a prescription bottle. His mother was lying very still, her hands folded over the covers, her eyes open, and those eyes were bloodshot. Not the warm, composed eyes that the entire world knew. Not the eyes from Roman holiday or breakfast at Tiffany's or any of the photographs that had made her face one of the most recognized on the planet. Something raw, something stripped of every defense she had ever built. She looked at him. She did not say she was fine. Sean would not speak about this night publicly for years. When he finally did, he was careful with the words, but he said enough. He said he found her. He said he saw her eyes. He said she told him things no child should have to hear. And he said she told him one sentence he carried for the rest of his life. This is that story. Not the story the world knows. The one that happened in a quiet room in Rome, with the lamp on and the city outside, and a mother who had finally run out of the strength to pretend. Audrey Hepburn had wanted one thing her whole life, not the fame, not the Oscar she won at 24, not the films or the magazine covers or the face that became synonymous with elegance across 50 years of photographs. She wanted a family. She wanted a home that stayed. She wanted the thing that had been taken from her before she was old enough to understand it was being taken. Her father left when she was 6. Joseph Victor Anthony Ruston, an English banker with fascist sympathies and somewhere else to be, walked out of her life and did not come back. Her mother stayed, but the damage was done in the way damage is always done to a 6-year-old who watches one half of her world simply disappear. She grew up in Nazi-occupied Holland through the war years, watching people disappear in a different and more terrible way, learning that the people you love can be taken from you on any ordinary morning. She was a child who ate tulip bulbs to survive and listened through windows to music she couldn't afford to hear, and kept going the way children keep going, because they don't know yet that they have a choice. She carried all of that into her adult life, into every room she ever entered, into every relationship she ever tried to build. She loved with the intensity of someone who already knew what it cost to lose, which is a frightening way to love, desperate and complete, and always slightly braced for the moment it ends. This was why, when her 14-year marriage to Mel Ferrer collapsed in 1968, she did not fall apart in public. She did not give interviews. She did not explain herself. She went quiet, pulled into herself, and came out the other side with a plan. She was 39 years old. She had a son, Sean, who was 8, and she had decided, with the full force of her particular kind of determination, that she was going to get this right. She was going to have the family she had always needed. She was going to build the home that stayed. The man she chose to build it with was named Andrea Dotti. She met him in the summer of 1968 on a yacht in the Mediterranean, at one of those floating parties that rich Italians give in the summer when the sea is the color of something from a painting. He was 30 years old, a psychiatrist from Rome, from a wealthy and aristocratic family, charming in the way that men of that background are when they have never been told no, 10 years younger than Audrey. He made her laugh. He was attentive and focused and seemed to understand what she needed, which was perhaps ironic given his profession, given what would come later. They married in January 1969, 6 weeks after her divorce from Mel Ferrer was finalized. The speed of it should have been a warning. It was not a warning. She was 39 years old, and she had been waiting her entire life for this, for the husband and the home and the children and the ordinary domestic peace that she believed was possible if you just found the right person and held on tight enough. They moved into a penthouse in Rome, frescoed ceilings, views of the Castel Sant'Angelo. Sean came with them. In February 1970, Luca was born. For a brief, luminous stretch of time, Audrey Hepburn had exactly what she had always wanted. She walked away from Hollywood without drama. No announcement, no press statement. She simply stopped going. She turned down films, she stayed in Rome. She made school lunches and spoke Italian and took the boys to the park, and she was, by all accounts, happy. Genuinely, quietly, almost cautiously happy. The way someone is happy when they have spent a long time being afraid that happiness was not available to them. Sean watched all of this. He was a child, then a teenager, and he watched his mother be happy in the way children watch, which is closely and without the analytical distance that adults apply to things. She was happy. That was the fact of it. The apartment was warm. Luca was a small and cheerful presence. His stepfather was funny and attentive and good at the things stepfathers are supposed to be good at. Life in Rome had a texture. The smell of the kitchen in the evenings, the sound of the city through the open windows, the weight and warmth of a place that felt like home. He did not see it coming. He did not understand for a long time what he was actually watching. It started the way these things always start. Quietly, with the particular invisibility of small changes that do not announce themselves. Andrea Dotti began to disappear, not literally, he was there, but he was also, increasingly, somewhere else. Dinners missed, weekends on business that extended into the following week, late nights in the clubs and bars of Rome's social world, that particular Roman scene of beautiful people and open bars, and the implicit understanding that a man of his position was not required to come home before sunrise. He was younger than his wife. He was charming and well-connected, and the husband of Audrey Hepburn, which was its own kind of currency in a city that still believed certain things were the natural right of certain kinds of men. The paparazzi found him before Audrey said anything publicly. Rome in the 1970s had a tabloid culture that was without mercy for the private lives of the famous, and Audrey Hepburn's husband photographed leaving a nightclub with a young woman was not a story that stayed small. The photographs ran in the Italian press. Then they ran again with different women in different clubs across different nights, and the story kept growing the way these stories do when no one stops them. Audrey saw the photographs. Everyone saw the photographs. She said almost nothing. This was characteristic of her in the deepest and most essential way. Composure was not a performance she put on for difficult moments. It was how she had survived everything. The war, the hunger, the father who left, the marriages that took more from her than they gave. You did not show what it cost you. You went still. You held on. The worst thing you could do in pain was let it become visible, because visible pain attracted attention, and attention in occupied Holland had been a way of dying, and some lessons go so deep they never come out. So she held on. She stayed. She believed, with the specific and painful stubbornness of someone who has already lost too much, that love was sufficient, that if she was patient enough, committed enough, present enough, something would change. Andrea would change. The marriage would find its way back to what it had been in the beginning, on that yacht in the Mediterranean, when he had looked at her like she was the only person in the world. Sean watched this too. He was a teenager now. He knew what the photographs meant. He knew what it meant when his stepfather did not come home at night. He knew what the particular stillness on his mother's face in the mornings meant, that specific composed stillness she wore when she was working very hard not to fall apart in front of her children. He did not know what to do with what he was seeing. There was no instruction for it. No one had given him a way to be useful in this situation. He was a teenage boy, watching his mother disappear into something that was consuming her one day at a time, and all he knew how to do was stay close and say nothing and hope. He said nothing, he watched. He stayed close. By 1978, the marriage had been ending for years. Dotti's infidelities had long since stopped being whispered about and had become a known fact in the circles they moved in. Audrey had suffered another miscarriage in 1974, and the grief of that had folded itself into everything else, into the daily accumulation of small losses that a bad marriage produces, each one manageable on its own, each one slightly more unbearable in combination with all the others. She had returned to acting briefly, Robin and Marian, in 1976, partly because she needed to remember who she was when she was not waiting for her husband to come home. She was magnificent in it. Critics wrote about the vulnerability, the lived-in quality. Those who knew her understood those were not craft choices. But the film ended and she came back to Rome, and Dotti went back to his evenings out, and Audrey went back to the apartment and the children and the business of holding her life together with both hands. Sean was 18. He had his own life beginning, his own friends, his own evenings, the particular tentative forward motion of a young man working out who he is. But the weight of his mother's unhappiness was always there. You could not be in a room with her without feeling it. It lived in her silences, in the specific way she held herself in the mornings when she had been awake all night, in the look she got sometimes at the window, not sad exactly, not angry, something older than both of those, something that had run out of the energy required to be either. He came home late on a night in the autumn of 1978. He did not remember later where he had been. Somewhere ordinary, somewhere with laughter and the easy lightness of being young and not yet fully acquainted with the weight of things. He came through the front door quietly. The apartment was dark. Rome was making its nighttime sounds through the windows. Everything was still. He went to check on his mother. He pushed open her bedroom door, and everything stopped. She was in bed, not sleeping. Her eyes were open. The lamp on the nightstand was on. Beside it, a glass of water. Beside that, a prescription bottle. And it was the combination of those things, the bottle, the stillness of her body, the quality of her hands folded too deliberately on the covers, the way she was not moving in the loose, natural way of sleep, but in something more final, more chosen, that made the breath leave his body. Her eyes were bloodshot. He would say that years later. He would describe her eyes, bloodshot, looking at him from the bed with an expression he had never seen on her face in 18 years of being her son. Not the composed face, not the warm face, not any of the faces she kept ready for the world. Something underneath all of those. Something that had been there a long time, hidden, and had finally come to the surface because there was nothing left with which to keep it down. She looked at him. She did not say she was fine. "Sean," she said. He came to the bed. He sat down. He did not say anything. He did not know what to say. There was no preparation for this moment, no rehearsal, no instruction. He was 18 years old, and his mother was looking at him with bloodshot eyes, and everything he thought he knew about how the world worked was rearranging itself around him. She talked. She told him things she had never told him. Not the managed version, not the version that protected him, the real version, about Dotti, about what the years had actually been. Not the family life she had arranged around herself as a kind of shelter, but the truth underneath the arrangement, the infidelities, the accumulated weight of each one, the specific way a photograph in a tabloid can be a small wound that will not close. She told him about what she had tried, about why she had stayed, about Luca and the need to give Luca a father, and the way that need had kept her inside something that was taking her apart, piece by piece, long after she should have found a way out. Sean did not know how to hold all of this. He was 18. He had no adequate response, no words that were equal to what was being put in front of him. He was a child, in the oldest and truest sense, a child in the presence of a parent's full, undefended pain, which is one of the most disorienting things a human being can experience. The people who are supposed to be solid, supposed to be fixed, supposed to be the ground you stand on, they turn out to be made of the same fragile material as everything else. And when that becomes visible, when the performance of solidity breaks down in front of you at midnight in a room in Rome, you discover that you are more alone than you thought you were, and also, somehow, more needed. He sat with her. He did not leave. He held her hand, or she held his. Later, he was not sure which direction the holding had gone, and at some point in the long passage of that night, Audrey looked at her son and said one thing: he never forgot it. There are sentences that arrive in the right moment and go all the way in, not because they are wise in the abstract, but because of the specific collision of the moment, the room, the face, and the cost at which the words were paid for before they were spoken. Audrey had paid for these words her whole life, in 2 marriages. In every morning she had put the composure back on and gone to make coffee, and acted as though the night had not happened. She looked at her son. Don't ever stay in something that has already ended, just to be brave. That was it, said quietly, in the near dark, with the lamp making its small circle and Rome moving outside, and the prescription bottle on the nightstand, and 18 years of knowing each other in the room with them, said by a woman who had just demonstrated, with her own body and her own exhausted stillness, exactly what ignoring that advice looks like. Sean stayed until she slept. He sat in the chair beside her bed and let the night go around him. Rome kept making its sounds. His mother's breathing slowed and deepened. He sat a while longer, not ready to leave. In the morning she was Audrey again. She made coffee. She asked him how he had slept. She moved through the kitchen with the efficiency she always had, precise, warm, the performance of normalcy so deeply practiced it had become indistinguishable from the real thing. The armor was back, but something had shifted between them. Not visible, not spoken, permanent. The marriage to Dotti ended in 1982. His mother moved to Tolokanaz, Switzerland, planted a garden, and let herself be quiet in the way people are quiet when a long war finally ends. She found Robert Wolders. He called her his Audrey. She called him her Rob. People who knew them said she was more at peace in those years than she had ever been. She spent the last years of her life in Somalia, Ethiopia, Sudan, kneeling in dust beside children who had nothing, using the last of her famous face to make people look at suffering they preferred to ignore. Sean watched all of it, and he carried the sentence. Through his own life, his own loves, his own complications, he carried what she had said to him in that room. Not as a wound, as a compass. Audrey Hepburn died on January 22, 1993. He wrote about her eventually, a memoir, careful, precise, tender. He wrote about 1978, not in full, in suggestion, in the shape of the thing rather than its exact edges. He wrote that he had found her. He wrote about her eyes. He wrote that she had said something to him he never forgot. He did not write what the sentence was. Some things belonged to the room they were said in, but in interviews years later he spoke about it. She was talking about herself, he said, telling me what she wished she had done differently, but she was also talking to me, giving me something she had never been given, permission to stop, permission to say that something has ended without calling that a failure. She believed her whole life that staying was noble, that endurance was the measure of love, and in that room I think she was finally admitting it had cost her too much. That sometimes the bravest thing is not to hold on. Sometimes the bravest thing is to let go. Audrey had paid for these words her whole life. In 2 marriages, in the years of staying when she should have left. In every morning she had put the composure back on and gone to make coffee and acted as though the night had not happened. She had paid for them in full,